Vision Education Class 4 Adjustment to Vision Loss, presented by Nick Peterson.
Hello, my name is Nick Peterson, and today we're going to be talking about adjustment to vision loss. And typically in the past, as program facilitator, I've presented this material more than 20 times to a variety size number of people, as little as 3 or 4 at one point, and as many as almost 20. This will be my first time doing this as a recording. So I won't have the benefit of seeing and interacting with you as you're taking this information in. But I do hope it is helpful. Having a better understanding about what you're experiencing, maybe some better understanding of some supports available to you, hopefully will be helpful. So first thing to know is that you are not alone in your vision loss. You may be alone in your home right now. You may be feeling like you're the only one out there who has had macular degeneration, retinitis pigmentosa, or glaucoma, or whatever else. Maybe you're the only one in your family who's experienced that condition. But there's more than 6.5 million people in the United States with vision loss. And that's an old figure. The number has actually probably gone up since then. In New York State, the number's over 400,000. In Monroe County alone, it's more like 16,000. So that's a pretty large number. In all likelihood, you probably know somebody else who has vision loss that can't be corrected. Maybe they're not totally blind, maybe they're not legally blind, but they likely have vision loss that you may not be aware of. Some people refer to as vision loss as the invisible disability for that reason, because it may not be something that is apparent to others, but might be something that they're carrying around with them, much like you are likely carrying around with you at this point. So some common feelings related to vision loss. And I should mention that not every one of the slides we're going to go through today is going to be a downer. Some of them, at least initially, may be a little difficult to make it through. But again, I hope that better understanding of what you're experiencing will be helpful to you. So the number one thing to know here is that vision loss is a loss. And anyone who's lived past 5, 6, 7 years old has experienced a loss. Maybe it's a family pet, maybe it's a loved one, grandparent. But I've had people describe to me as vision loss being the greatest and most difficult loss they've ever experienced. And perhaps that resonates with you. It is a loss. And there's some feelings that are associated with that loss. They're on the screen here, but if you're not able to read them, I'll certainly go through them with you. Denial tends to be the initial reaction. I've got 6 brothers and sisters. Nobody else has had vision loss. That doctor doesn't know what they're talking about. Anger. Why me? Depression can lead to an emptiness or a fog. Anxiety, which can be a cover for depression. And frustration. Again, these feelings tend to lengthen with time and depending on adjustment. So hopefully, if you're feeling depressed today, it's not for forever. But there is a natural resentment or anger that comes from needing to make an adjustment. So hopefully, if you're feeling that way, that gives you some comfort. That, it's understandable that it's frustrating that you now have to have somebody help you with your mail, perhaps. Whereas for 40, 50, 60 years, you did just fine on your own. Vision loss can lead to those feelings. And also some fears. Fear of losing independence is a big one, especially for people who drive still. They're worried that the doctor's going to take their license away, or maybe they should give up their license on their own. Where will that leave them? Will they be stranded at home alone if they can't drive anymore? Fear of becoming isolated, along with the inability to drive. What if that means that nobody comes to see you anymore? Fear of losing fun activities. Fear of not being taken seriously. And I did mention, I believe, that I'll be sharing some anecdotes with you guys that I've picked up over the years. I'd love to get your feelings on this. Of course, that's not possible. So I'll share. So I had a gentleman several years ago now who I was working with who told me that despite being vision impaired and possibly legally blind, I'm not sure if he was, but he likely is now. He was still going with his adult sons into the woods to go hunting. He had a gun in his hand, he told me. I didn't ask if it was loaded. He said he never shot the gun anymore, but he still wanted to be out there with his boys. And I thought about it a moment. I asked him, why are you doing that? What's making you do that? And he said, I don't want them to know that I'm losing my sight. I said, well, what is your concern there? What is your fear there? He said, I don't want them to think of me as less of a man, which is certainly a very powerful statement. And that was his greatest fear, his adult sons finding out that he was losing his sight. Again, these fears become less overwhelming with time and with the development of new coping skills. Stages of grief. So, just like any loss, grief is a common reaction. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross started this understanding years ago. But frequently there is a trauma that starts that grief, and that could be physical or social. Another story comes to mind. I had a gentleman told me at one point how he had gone to his eye doctor for a regular checkup, and the doctor looked at his eyes. He didn't think there was much of anything of note when he went in for the appointment. And the doctor says, so you know you're going to be totally blind, right? He was shocked. He said he had no idea. What are you talking about? He says, yeah, based on what I'm seeing here, you'll have no light perception in a few years. Which obviously that doctor missed the coursework on bedside manner, but obviously that was also very traumatic for the gentleman. And it was something that he was still dealing with. So that would be more a social trauma. But people can obviously have accidents and suffer a physical trauma that affects their ability to see also. Shock and denial is another common stage of grief. It can lead to numbness, and people tend to just seek out multiple doctors. Succumbing in depression. Mourning and withdrawal leads to an anger at the situation. Succumbing in depression may be the emotional low. There tends to be a lot of self-pity and isolation. Maybe a kind of, who would want to be around me like this mentality. Reassessment and reaffirmation is where people learn to identify new strengths and weaknesses. Coping and mobilization, learn new techniques to keep independence. Self-acceptance and self-esteem is where people tend to think of themselves as a person first. So Jim may be blind, but he is a man who is blind. He's not a blind man. And that's a very important distinction for you and your loved ones to make. You're still the same person you were. And having people refer to you as the blind lady, the blind man, can be very invalidating to you as a person. Important to mention, it's a process, and not everyone will experience all of these stages, and not necessarily in this order. So if you're doing fairly well and you feel like you might be headed for coping and mobilization or self-acceptance and self-esteem, and you think, well, I never ever really came and was dealing with severe depression, well, hopefully you don't. But for some, yes. So considering the losses, and like I said, not every slide is like this. There's only a couple more, so hang in there. Loss of independence, we already kind of touched on. Loss of confidence and self-worth. People tend to no longer be able to do things they once did. Driving, maybe working perhaps, depending on what their job is. People can feel like they can't go to the movies anymore, maybe go out to the restaurants. Can be a big loss. Loss of privacy. People sometimes have to give up control over their money or their mail. And in the 20 plus times I've presented this material, some people tell me they love that they don't have to deal with their mail anymore, but some people really miss it, or they wonder what their kids are not telling them about what came in the mail today that they decided I didn't need to be aware of. That's very different for them as the leader of the family up until vision loss happened. That being said, that vision loss doesn't mean that you can't still be the leader of your family. Loss of employment, like I kind of touched on already. Loss of friends and family. And I kind of mentioned this already, the whole who would want to be around me like this. Sometimes that can be something of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If Jim doesn't want to call anymore, you might think, well, Jim doesn't want to be around me now that I can't see to go to the movies. And if that's what you decide, then maybe you never speak to Jim again. And perhaps that is the case, but perhaps not. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So this graph here, I think, is very powerful. And I'll do my best to describe it for those of you who aren't able to see what's on screen now. But this is a bar graph that shows prevalence of depression by disease. So across the bottom, and this is based on several different studies that were done. Across the bottom, we've got age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. We've got lung cancer, diabetes, heart failure, and COPD. And macular degeneration showed the highest prevalence of depression, or the highest occurrence of depression, at 30%. Lung cancer, diabetes, also 25%, 22% for heart failure, and COPD, 18%. So macular degeneration had the highest prevalence of depression. I typically ask people what is common about the other conditions on this chart: lung cancer, diabetes, heart failure, COPD. What do they all have in common that isn't true of macular degeneration? Think about it a moment. And some people will say, well, there's treatment for lung cancer, diabetes, heart failure, COPD. And that may be true. But I think the most striking thing for me is that all those conditions are potentially fatal, which macular degeneration is not. Losing your sight because of macular degeneration or retinitis pigmentosa or some of the other common eye conditions isn't going to kill you, but it still was more often associated with depression than several conditions that could potentially end somebody's life. And I think that's really striking. Point in mentioning that is if you're having a hard day today or a lot of hard days recently, there's good reason for that. You're going through something that's very difficult. And hopefully your family and your support system is understanding of that. Like I said, this is not all heavy material. Now we're going to talk about, okay, so I know it's terrible. Thanks, Nick. I knew that already. But what can be done? Where do we go from here? Now that you have an understanding of why it is you may be having such a hard time with vision loss, what can be done? So one idea might be making a list of daily difficulties you're having, um, and talking with your family. It's not an easy conversation to have by any stretch of the imagination, but it makes sure that you're aware of their concerns and they're aware of yours. Um, and it's really important to find somebody who listens, whether it be a friend, family member, um, religious figure, whoever it is. Somebody who listens can be really helpful. And everybody wants to be healthy, fast, and active in our recently very fast-paced world. But knowing as much as you can about your vision loss hopefully will help you understand where your vision loss is going to go and what you can do in the meantime. Checking the time. So you can continue to lead a full and rewarding life. And that may seem hard to believe right now. It says rewarding life. Especially if vision loss is somewhat new for you. But by making adjustments, it may be possible for you to continue to do your favorite hobbies or activities, knitting, Yahtzee, playing cards. I've seen it before. It certainly is, depending on what your vision loss is like. There are adaptations that may be able to help you with those sorts of things. Participating in family activities, certainly, doing volunteer work. I've worked with many people who were still volunteering. They were retired, but they were volunteering because they wanted that stimulation and they wanted to be active and giving back. And certainly travel as well. At the end of the day, challenges of vision loss are overcome every day by those who have chosen to remain engaged in their lives and enjoy what life has to offer them. You don't have to stop working. Technical assistance is available where basic adjustments can be made to allow people with vision loss to remain in the workforce. It's impossible in some cases to remain in your current job. There's a website, and you might notice that there's references on each of the slides. All the references are listed on the last slide of the packet you have, or the last PowerPoint slide if you got a digital version of this. My family wants to help, but they're doing too much. I always think of that scene from Scent of a Woman where Al Pacino barks at what's his name, Chris O'Donnell, because he grabs his arm one too many times. He feels like that's what he has to do because he's the sighted guide. He has to grab Pacino, and Pacino doesn't like that. Of course, he's a capable, functioning adult. He doesn't want to be grabbed and led around like a child. And some family members will do that. Some loved ones and some strangers will do that too. I've heard of that happening. They can become overprotective regardless of skills and your ability to perform them safely. So again, another conversation to have in terms of what their concerns are and what you feel you are still capable of. And family members don't understand how it is that some days you're having a bad eye day, so to speak, or how it can take so long for your eyes to adjust when you come in from a bright environment into a dark store. Maybe you need to stand there for a few minutes, let your eyes focus or adjust. A lot of people have mentioned that their family members feel like they might be faking it because why is it you couldn't see the cashier handing back your credit card to you at the store, but you can see a dime 20 feet away from you on the floor over there? Doesn't make any sense because they don't understand what vision loss presents as. With somebody with like macular degeneration, for example, that's completely understandable if you understand the condition, but a lot of people don't. And people can be very fearful of family members preparing meals, using household appliances, climbing stairs. And, it's understandable that they're concerned, but at the same time, it can be very infantilizing for an individual who is still feeling more than capable despite their vision loss. So it's certainly something to talk about. In the same way, that it's a process for you, it's a process for them. So I would encourage you to try and be patient with them. Um, we're going to talk in a few more minutes about how um, families might be able to be educated as far as how it is that you can see a dime 20 feet away, but you can't see a credit card right in front of your face. How are we doing? Hope you're still there. You can remain independent. There's ways for you to navigate around your home, cook your meals safely, pay your bills, and certainly new technology comes out daily. Uh, the Amazon Echo, I have one about 5 feet away from me, so I won't say its name because it will start talking, but um, maybe we'll. Alexa, say hello.
Hi.
It's a little alarming initially, but it can be very helpful. I can turn lights in my place on and off with my voice. I can turn on music. I can get news, weather, sports updates. You could play Jeopardy on there. Very mentally stimulating. The Amazon Echo doesn't cost anything every month for their basic software or their basic functionality. You just need to connect it to Wi-Fi, which if you don't know what Wi-Fi is, you probably don't have it, but maybe you do. Something to think about. New technology makes a lot of things easier that would have been impossible 20 or 30 years ago. That being said, so we're going to talk about assistive technology resources. Good time for me to mention that while I was working as program facilitator for Project Rebuild for years, I was also one of the assistive technology instructors at ABVI, and that's the field I work in now. So Amazon Echo is fantastic. Google Home is a very similar device. But I wanted to show you guys something that you might have access to right now, but probably don't know about. So iPhones, iPads have built-in accessibility features called VoiceOver. It makes it possible for people with literally no...
Apple ID, not now, button. Magnifier, magnification, app switcher, magnifier.
Literally
active.
No sight.
Magnifier, active.
To be able to use them.
Magnifier, FaceTime. Photos.
So this is VoiceOver.
Double tap to open.
You'll notice the screen is still on.
Actions. Camera.
But I can navigate the screen without looking at it.
Reminders.
And it will
News.
read to me
App Store.
what is on the screen.
Books.
This is just
Double
an
tap to
iPhone.
open.
VoiceOver is free. It's built into your iPhone if you have an iPhone that's newer than like 15 years old, something like that. And it makes it possible for somebody with literally no sight to be able to use them.
Screen curtain on.
It's a little difficult to learn and would likely necessitate some training either at the Apple Store or online, or maybe you could find somebody who would be knowledgeable on the subject like myself. But it makes it possible that I turn the screen off now. So imagine I have no sight. It makes it possible for me to continue to use my smartphone. I can make phone calls, I can send and receive emails. Everything that a sighted person can do with their smartphone is now accessible to me on the iPhone because of VoiceOver.
App switcher, messages, active.
And again,
screen curtain off.
It's free.
Close messages.
And built into your phone already. TalkBack is the Android equivalent. I hesitate to turn it on my phone because I've had some difficulties with it before. I actually prefer iPhones and iPads for that reason, but it's something to think about. Windows Magnifier is built into your PC, into your non-Apple computer. I don't know that I necessarily want to show you that right now, but it is, again, free to use and might be very helpful to be able to enlarge the screen, change the contrast, change the size of your pointer. Zoom Text is also a, excuse me, a screen magnifier. It's very capable. It's the #1 screen magnifier in the world. And JAWS is a screen reader. So somebody with literally no sight whatsoever can use a computer with JAWS or with VoiceOver on an Apple computer to be able to send and receive emails, make spreadsheets, anything under the sun can be done because of those resources. So if you're really struggling to use your computer, to use your smartphone, to get information, those software options might be very helpful to you, or maybe the Amazon Echo might be something to look into. If you have more questions, ABVI should be able to point you in the right direction with that. And again, of course, that's the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired in Rochester. Okay. These days, I am the upstate New York representative for a company called Visibility. So I still work with people who are visually impaired or blind. I do training on those software I just mentioned, but I also show people some high-tech devices. And I wanted to show you guys one. This one. So this here is a CCTV. You're probably familiar with the term CCTV as closed circuit television. What we have here is a 5-inch screen that magnifies print. You might be able to see that I'm changing the contrast on the screen. You can increase and decrease size. This is not a computer. This doesn't have a cell phone signal, so you can't make phone calls on it. What it does is it enables people to be able to magnify print. So something like this, maybe in a black and white, would be very discreet. Use at a restaurant to be able to read the menu, to be able to see a price at Wegmans or at Tops. And CCTVs, this is a 5-inch I mentioned. CCTVs come in all different shapes and sizes now and all different capabilities. This is a 5-inch. They come smaller, they come much larger. I've seen 24-inch CCTVs that can read to you. So if you aren't able to read print at all anymore, you simply put the document in front of one of these devices and you press a button and it will read an entire document to you or a book to you. Or some of them don't even have a screen if your vision loss has progressed to a point that, excuse me, that's no longer helpful. My reason for mentioning all that is those sorts of challenges can be overcome now. iPhones and iPads also have fantastic software called Seeing AI. That's seeing like seeing eye dog, AI like artificial intelligence, Seeing AI. It's free software from Microsoft, excuse me, that can read to you also, and can take a guess as far as people's age and identify colors, and it's just really amazing. And again, it's free and it's from Microsoft, so it's legitimate. At the end of the day, though, people tend to miss out on because they're not aware of all these wonderful things. And my phrase that I've adopted over the years is people don't know what they don't know. So if you're not aware of something like that, you don't even know to ask about it as being a possibility. Again, if you have questions, ABVI should be able to help you, or my phone number is on the screen here. Again, I'm Nick Peterson. The 585 number is mine, and the email address routes directly to me also. I like sharing what I know. If you have questions about technology, you can certainly reach out to me. That being said, got a few more slides here. There's support out there. Anyone who goes through low vision screening with ABVI is able to participate in support groups. So they have a wonderful monthly recreation group called WAMS, or Wednesday Afternoon Meeting Society, that we meets once a month on a Wednesday. I don't remember which Wednesday. Or some of the participants have told me the name is actually short for We Are Merry Seniors. It's a very fun, lively bunch of people with various levels of vision loss that get together and they play bingo. They do arts and crafts. They have speakers. I've spoken to them before. They have performances and they take trips. It's just really fun. The Mind series that's on the screen there is the monthly information news and discussion group. A little less of a focus on fun, but more focus on being informative. Excuse me. They meet on a Tuesday every month. And the support groups, there's various support groups at ABVI. Some of them are just for men, some of them are just for ladies, some of them are co-ed. But it was, and I'm not certain if this is true anymore, but ABVI used to provide transportation for those, which is really nice. There is a phone number I can give you called the events line from ABVI, 585-327-5553, where you can find out about the upcoming events. And that should be good whether you're watching this in 2020 or 2025. The events line, 327-5553. Find out what's coming up. For those who are legally blind, the state subsidizes services, including sessions with social workers, rehabilitation teachers, and orientation and mobility specialists. So social workers would be helpful in terms of identifying what sort of services you need. Rehabilitation teachers might be able to help you identify safe ways to continue to cook in your home, or do laundry, or make popcorn without burning every single kernel. An orientational mobility specialist help people get around. Again, that tends to be for people who are legally blind and New York State residents. And then there's other support groups as well to think about. There's something that isn't on here anymore, apparently, that I wanted to mention. But I have a former coworker at ABVI named Renee, who used to do a class on the sensitivity to blindness that might be helpful for family members, where they can actually experience what it's like to have retinitis pigmentosa or macular degeneration, because she has goggles that simulate those eye conditions. And Renee is nearly totally blind, but is one of the most capable people I've ever met. And she will wake them up to what it is they should be offering you and remind them of what you're still capable of. Again, her name is Renee. I don't have her phone number in here anymore, apparently. But if you were to call ABVI, they should be able to get you that information. And that's a free thing that she does a couple times a month. Wizard Party. Normally we'd be taking a break. Anybody need coffee? I've got some here. Maybe use the bathroom. Just one more slide here. Yeah, just one more. So reframing. There's a quote here that I like to reference. My life has been full of terrible misfortunes. Most of it has never happened. Mark Twain. So to go back a little while to the friend who doesn't call anymore. If you decide that Jim is a jerk and he doesn't want to see me anymore because I'm blind and I'm not going to call him anymore, then chances are you're never going to speak to Jim again. But if you reconsider or change your perspective or reframe that situation, you change your inner dialogue or your inner monologue to, well, maybe Jim has something going on and would welcome a call from me. You pick up the phone, you call Jim. It may be a completely different sort of interaction. And I would encourage you to do that if you have lost touch with somebody, rather than just assume that they have made that decision because of your vision loss. Who knows? Maybe they're dealing with something and would very much like to hear from their old friend or a loved one. So, reframing is just like changing a picture frame from vertical to horizontal. The picture changes entirely. The view changes entirely. Reframing can cause a new way of viewing certain aspects of a person, others, a problem, or a situation. So it might be something to think about. I can't read a newspaper anymore. Oh, wait, there's all these wonderful devices and technology that might be able to help me. Or maybe I could have my wife read it to me, and it's something we could do together. Or maybe I can get it on audio format, and I can enjoy it that way, rather than deciding that it's completely hopeless. A new perspective might be just what the doctor ordered. Something to think about. Self-talk covers how we perceive others. So if you walk down the street thinking that everybody's out to get you, you're going to interact with them in a very different way than if you try to remember that that's not, hopefully not necessarily true. And that alters the way we interpret a negative event. So that was a lot of information, and I think that was about 45 minutes long, maybe 40 minutes long. Hopefully you've got the realization that there are still things that you can do regardless of your vision loss. If you aren't able to cook a 12-course meal anymore, that may be the case, but it doesn't mean you're not necessarily able to cook. And having that level of ownership can be very important for you. I had a lady tell me at one point while I was working with her with problem-solving training that she didn't realize how comfortable she had gotten with being uncomfortable, which I think for a lot of people has really resonated. Maybe you're very uncomfortable at this point, but hopefully a new understanding and some new resources has been helpful to you. With that, I've been Nick Peterson, and I hope this was helpful to you. Maybe I'll see you around at some point, and thanks for sticking with me to the end. Take care.